mid-60s of looking at the parapsychological phenomenon and saying, this stuff looks like it's real, there's good experimental basis for it, yet we don't have an explanation of classical science, so what's the answer? Mm-hmm. And it turns out now, a few years later, that we're applying quantum principles to it, and it starts to yield to us in a way that's understandable.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what would be one of the bigger sort of unanswered question that required you to go to quantum physics?
Well, the fact that the scientists of the 20th century were saying telepathy and these types of events simply don't exist. They're not real. They're a figment of people's imagination. But we have subsequently, in recent years, jumping way ahead, subsequently used Faraday cage blocking, which screens out electromagnetic signaling of all sorts, and find that brain waves get across those Faraday cage breaker screens. And for example, twins, mother-child, lovers, hook up their brain waves across the Faraday's cage screen, and they go into synchronization. Their brain waves go into sync. Well, that's a non-local quantum effect, and it's been recognized for quite a number of years, but the academic physics community simply hasn't want to recognize that. They've been holding on to the dogma that this really doesn't have anything to do with us. It has to do only with subatomic matter, and that's just simply wrong.
Mm-hmm. All right, so when you began to question it on a larger scale, did at that time that bring you in conflict with the people you work with and studied with?
Well, it's always called academic eyebrows to be raised, but that hasn't slowed me down. Mm-hmm. Simply after the flight, after my flight of Apollo 14 and the experience that happened on there, and appealing to the literature and setting up the Institute of Nordic Sciences and setting up our own research protocols and laboratories, we've made great progress over the years. Mm-hmm. Although it's taken been 30-some years now, but we've made great progress.
Okay, all right. So you made bigger progress, and that progress, do you see a trend of it leading to any certain conclusions?
Well, the answer is yes. You lead to different conclusions. The biggest thing that I think all of this shows is that, as an ancient mystic said, everything is totally interconnected, that in a sense we're all one. And this is part of the experience I had in space coming back, looking at the star systems and recognizing that the molecules of my body and the molecules in the spacecraft and in my partner's bodies were prototyped or perhaps manufactured in some ancient generation of stars, and that's the source of our matter in the universe, is the star systems. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden the recognition, those are my molecules. It's a personal experience. Mm-hmm. And very powerful experience, and accompanied by ecstasy at that point, mm-hmm. that I'd never had such an experience. And I later found out it's described in the ancient literature of India called Salvakapa Samadhi. It's where you see things the way they are in nature as separate things, but you experience them internally and viscerally as a unity and accompanied by ecstasy. And that's a very powerful experience. Mm-hmm.
Once you had some of these experiences, did you relay your experiences to NASA?
No, I had to, not at that point. I had to think about it for a long while. And slowly the understanding has come over the years as we have progressed with the science to help validate some of these perceptions, validate some of these ideas, understand what entanglement is as how it relates to us. And for example, there's a very good book out by Irving Laszlo, a colleague of ours in Europe, and he's used the notion of the Akashic record that comes out of ancient mysticism. And it turns out that our modern work in quantum holography shows exactly how that takes place, and it's correct. And so we're starting to validate a lot of these types of experiences with modern science.
All right, so you're saying that the experiences, including the idea that your molecules are part of the fabric of everything, you say that works in harmony with scientific fact that's already established, or is it creating
of course,
new?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're interpreting and going further in our exploration of seeing how these connections take place. And it's taken quite a few years here, but more and more these ideas are being accepted. And there's a few Nobel laureates that are involved that are starting to realize that, hey, this is the way it is too.
Why does it take scientists so long to come around what civilizations, as long as mankind has been on the face of the planet, have known?
Well, now that's not quite a fair statement. We have had cultural paradigms and cultural knowledge, and that's very, very slow to change, whether it's called scientific knowledge or something else. It's always been that way. We humans are very slow to change, and Max Planck said it very succinctly at the end of the 19th century that change isn't created by convincing skeptics, but funeral by funeral. In other words, we have to die off, and a new generation or grow up with different ideas for change to really take place.
Yeah. Well, it seems to me that change is going in the opposite direction, as it seems to me the planet becomes more and more secular as far as any sort of other than natural explanation for things that are. Can't you see the trend going the other way, or do you think that maybe there's a segment of the scientific realm that's coming around to that way?
Well, there's always these various trends going on continuously. And if anybody's looked at the stock market or any other trend in nature, it goes up and down, back and forth, up and down, back and forth. And right now, it would appear to me on a global basis, we're backing down a little bit. And certainly our economic system just in the last year or so, and particularly in the last few weeks, seems to be headed toward a recession. But we've been doing that forever, I guess. And I have been saying in my lectures for the last few years that we're in danger of creating the second fall of the Roman Empire right now.
Are you talking about the United States or the world economy in general?
Well, I think that it's all going to go together, but the United States is kind of leading in this direction right now, in the wrong direction.
Well, I don't see where this. You say that there's been ebbs and tides in the belief of the sort of the spiritual or mystical world that may be pervasive for those that are seeking it, but absent for those who don't believe in it. But I really don't see where there has been a forward agreement among intellectuals or politicians on any event, perhaps maybe except for after 9/11 when there was a multi-religion sort of a prayer vigil in Washington, D.C., but other than that, it was right back to, just the animosity that's pervasive in the secularism, as I said. So I'm not seeing where it ever came back this way. Can you tell me an example where it has?
Well, I'm not quite sure what you're aiming for here.
Well, I'm saying that you said you basically said there were sort of ebbs and tides of the belief in maybe the mystical or maybe the supernatural, however you want to word that. The other than
explainable.
Talking
about everything, everything, whether it's the stock market, the economic system, the political system. And it is kind of a given. Lord Acton said it quite a couple of centuries ago, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So in our experience, any political party that stays into power too long, things get corrupt, goes in the wrong direction. But at this point in time, since World War II, the United States became a world power at the end of World War II. And we have been progressing reasonably well until all of a sudden this whole scenario of greed, corporate power started to build up, and